Have you ever mistaken a millionaire for your Uber driver and then found out he was about to become your boss? Imagine the embarrassment, the shock, and the absolute chaos that would follow. Well, that is exactly what happened to Leah Monroe, a single mom just trying to survive in Seattle, and trust me, this story is going to blow your mind because what starts as a simple case of mistaken identity on a foggy winter morning turns into a journey of resilience, unexpected romance, and a life-changing opportunity that neither of them saw coming. Stick around, because by the end of this you will understand why sometimes the universe has a funny way of putting the right people in your path at exactly the right moment. And before you ask, yes, there is a happy ending. But the road to get there is anything but smooth, so buckle up, because Leah is about to have the most awkward yet transformative day of her entire life. The alarm clock screamed at 5:30 in the morning, and Leah Monroe jolted. Awake in her cramped Seattle apartment, the sound was harsh and unforgiving, much like the life she had been living for the past 3 years. She reached over and slammed her hand on the snooze button, but she knew she could not afford even 5 more minutes of sleep. Today was important too. Important to mess up. Her daughter Mia was still asleep in the bed next to hers. Their tiny one-bedroom apartment barely had space for both of them, but Leah had made it work somehow. She always made it work. Leah quietly slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Mia, and tiptoed to the bathroom. The mirror reflected back a tired woman with dark circles under her eyes and hair that desperately needed a trim. But there was no time for that. No money. Either. She splashed cold water on her face and tried to shake off the exhaustion that clung to her like a second skin. Today she had a job interview at Cascade Enterprises, one of the biggest tech companies in Seattle, and she could not afford to blow it. She had been through 12 jobs in the last 3 years, not because she was unreliable or incompetent, but because life as a single mom was unpredictable. Mia got sick. Daycare fell through temp positions, ended without warning, and every time Leah thought she was getting ahead, something pulled her back down. But this job at Cascade Enterprises felt different. It was a permanent position with benefits, health insurance, paid time off, the kind of stability she had been dreaming about since her ex-husband walked out on them. Leah tiptoed back into the bedroom and gently shook Mia awake. Her daughter groaned and buried her face in the pillow. "Come on, sweetheart, we have to get up," Leah whispered. Mia was only 6 years old, but she had already learned to be more mature than most kids her age. She understood that mommy had to work, that money was tight, that sometimes they had to skip things other kids took for granted. Mia rubbed her eyes and sat up. "Where are we going, Mommy?" Leah smiled and brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "You're going to Miss Angela's house for a few hours, and Mommy has a very important meeting. Remember, I told you about it." Mia nodded sleepily. "Miss Angela is nice. She lets me draw." Leah felt a pang of guilt. Angela was their neighbor, an older woman who occasionally watched Mia when Leah had interviews or odd jobs. Angela never asked for much money, but Leah always tried to pay her something, even if it meant skipping lunch herself. They got dressed quickly. Leah in her only good blazer, which she had bought from a thrift store, and Mia in her favorite pink sweater. They grabbed a quick breakfast of cereal and toast and headed out into the cold Seattle morning. The fog was thick that day, so thick that Leah could barely see 10 feet in front of her. She held Mia's hand tightly as they walked down the street to Miss Angela's apartment. After dropping Mia off, Leah checked her phone. She had ordered an Uber to take her to Cascade Enterprises because the bus route was unreliable, and she could not risk being late. The app showed that her driver was 2 minutes away, a black sedan. She stood on the corner, shivering in the cold and watching the fog swirl around the streetlights. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb, and Leah assumed it was her Uber. She opened the back door and climbed in without really looking at the driver. "Sorry, I am running a bit behind," she said breathlessly. "Thank you so much for picking me up. I have a really important interview this morning, and I cannot be late." The man in the driver's seat turned to look at her, and Leah finally got a good look at him. He was older than she expected, maybe in his late 30s, with sharp features, dark hair, and an expensive-looking suit. He raised an eyebrow and opened his mouth to say something, but Leah was already rattling on nervously. "The address is Cascade Enterprises downtown. I put it in the app already. I really appreciate this. I know the fog is terrible today. The man hesitated for a moment, and then to Laya's surprise, he simply nodded and started driving. Laya settled back into the leather seat and tried to calm her nerves. She pulled out her phone and went over her notes for the interview. She had researched the company thoroughly. She knew about their recent projects, their company culture, and the CEO, Adrian Hale, who was apparently some kind of genius in the tech world. She glanced up at the driver again and felt a twinge of guilt. He looked too well dressed to be an Uber driver, but she pushed the thought aside. Maybe he was just one of those people who took pride in their appearance, no matter what job they had. "Hey, I am sorry if I seem a little crazy," she said. "I am just really nervous about this interview. I have been out of work for a few weeks and I really need this job." The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror, and she thought she saw a hint of a smile. "What kind of job is it?" he asked. His voice was deep and calm. Laya relaxed a little. "It is an administrative assistant position at Cascade Enterprises. I know it does not sound like much, but it is a permanent position with benefits, and that is huge for me and my daughter." The driver nodded. "I see. And what makes you think you are qualified for the position?" Laya blinked, surprised by the question. Most Uber drivers did not ask about her qualifications, but maybe he was just making conversation. "Well, I have a lot of experience in administration," she said. "I have worked in offices doing data entry, scheduling, coordinating projects, that kind of thing. I know my resume looks a little scattered because I have had a lot of short-term jobs, but that is just because of my situation, not because I am not good at what I do." The driver was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "It sounds like you have had a tough time." Laya felt her throat tighten. "Yeah, you could say that, but I am not giving up. I have a daughter, and I am going to make sure she has a good life no matter what it takes." The rest of the drive was quiet, and Laya used the time to mentally prepare herself. When they pulled up in front of Cascade Enterprises, she grabbed her bag and opened the door. "Thank you so much," she said. "I really appreciate the ride." She fumbled with her phone, trying to add a tip, but the driver waved her off. "Do not worry about it," he said. "Good luck with your interview." Laya smiled gratefully and hurried into the building. The lobby of Cascade Enterprises was sleek and modern, with high ceilings and glass walls everywhere. Laya felt out of place in her thrift store blazer, but she held her head high and walked up to the reception desk. "I'm here for an interview," she told the receptionist. "My name is Laya Monroe." The receptionist checked her computer and nodded. "Please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." Laya sat down in one of the leather chairs and tried to calm her racing heart. She watched employees walk by, all of them looking confident and polished. She felt like an imposter, but she reminded herself that she had earned this interview. She was qualified. She could do this. After what felt like an eternity, a woman in a sharp pantsuit approached her. "Miss Monroe, I am Jessica Tran, the HR director. Please follow me." Laya stood and followed Jessica down a long hallway. They entered a conference room where two other people were already seated, a middle-aged man with glasses and a younger woman with a tablet. Jessica gestured to a chair, and Laya sat down. "This is Tom Richardson, our operations manager, and Emily Chen, our senior recruiter. They will be conducting your interview today." Laya shook hands with both of them and tried to project confidence. Tom opened a folder and scanned Laya's resume. "So, Miss Monroe, I see you have had quite a few positions in the past 3 years. Can you walk us through that?" Laya had been expecting this question, but it still made her stomach twist. "Of course," she said. "I have had some challenges balancing work and childcare. I am a single mom and my daughter is 6 years old. There have been times when daycare fell through or she got sick, and I had to leave a job. Some of the positions were temporary to begin with, but I have always been committed to doing my best work no matter how long I am in a role." Emily looked up from her tablet. "What would you say is your greatest strength?" Laya thought for a moment. "I am resilient," she said. "I do not give up even when things get hard. I am organized, I am a fast learner, and I am dedicated. I know my resume might not look perfect, but I can promise you that if you give me this job, I will give it everything." I have Tom and Emily exchanged a glance, and Laya could not tell if it was positive or negative. Tom leaned back in his chair. "Tell me about a time when you had to handle multiple priorities at once." Laya launched into an anecdote about a previous job where she had to manage schedules for 3 different managers. While also handling customer inquiries, she made sure to emphasize her organizational skills and her ability to stay calm under pressure. The interview continued for another 20 minutes, and Laya felt like she was holding her own. But then, as soon as she was out of the building, Laya pulled out her phone and texted her friend Rachel. "Oh my God, I just had the most humiliating experience of my life. I mistook the CEO for my Uber driver, and then he showed up in my interview. I want to die." Rachel responded immediately, "What, are you serious? That is insane, but also kind of funny. Maybe he will think you are memorable." Laya groaned. Memorable was not the word she was hoping for. She took the bus home because she could not afford another Uber, and spent the entire ride replaying the interview in her head. By the time she got back to her apartment, she was convinced she had blown it. She picked up Mia from Miss Angela's and spent the rest of the day trying to distract herself by playing with her daughter. That evening, after Mia was asleep, Laya sat on the couch and stared at her phone. She knew she should not, but she could not help herself. She opened her laptop and Googled Adrian Hale. The search results were overwhelming. He was not just the CEO of Cascade Enterprises. He was a self-made billionaire who had started the company from nothing. He was known for being brilliant, but also ruthless. There were articles about his business acumen, his philanthropy, and his personal life, which was mostly private. Laya closed her laptop and sighed. There was no way she was getting that job. Not after what had happened. She tried to prepare herself for rejection and started browsing other job listings, but her heart was not in it. 2 days later, Laya was making breakfast for Mia when her phone rang. It was an unknown number, and she almost did not answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello. This is Laya, Miss Monroe. This is Jessica Tran from Cascade Enterprises." Laya's heart leapt into her throat. "I am calling to let you know that we would like to offer you the position of administrative assistant." Laya nearly dropped the phone. "Are you serious?" "Yes, we were very impressed with your interview, and Mr. Hale specifically recommended you for the position." Laya could not believe what she was hearing. "Mr. Hale recommended me?" "Yes, he said you demonstrated resilience and authenticity, which are qualities we value highly here. We would like you to start next Monday if that works for you." Laya felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes, absolutely, thank you so much." Jessica went over the details of the salary, benefits, and start date, and by the time Laya hung up, she was grinning from ear to ear. Mia looked up from her cereal. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Laya wiped her eyes and laughed because something really good just happened. "Sweetheart." The following Monday, Laya showed up for her first day at Cascade Enterprises. She was nervous but also excited. She was given a tour of the office, introduced to her colleagues, and shown to her desk. It was a small cubicle, but to Laya it felt like a throne. She had done it. She had landed a stable job with benefits. For the first few weeks, Laya kept her head down and focused on doing excellent work. She was efficient, organized, and always willing to help her colleagues. She quickly earned a reputation as someone reliable, and her supervisor praised her performance, but she had not seen Adrian Hale since the interview, and part of her was relieved. She was still mortified by the Uber incident, and she hoped he had forgotten all about it. But one afternoon, Laya was walking down the hallway when she nearly collided with someone. She looked up and found herself face to face with Adrian. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she stammered. Adrian smiled. "It is fine, Miss Monroe. How are you settling in?" Laya felt her cheeks flush really well. "Thank you. I love working here." "Good. I'm glad to hear it." Adrian paused and then said, "I have been meaning to talk to you, actually. Do you have a moment?" Laya's heart started racing. "Sure, of course." Adrian led her to a small conference room and closed the door. Laya's mind was spinning. Was she in trouble? Had she done something wrong? Adrian sat down and gestured for her to do the same. "I wanted to apologize," he said. Laya blinked. "I am sorry." "Apologize for what? For not correcting you that morning when you thought I was your Uber driver. I should have said something right away, but I was curious to see how the situation would play out. And then I realized you were coming in for an interview, and I thought it might be interesting to see how you handled yourself under pressure." Laya did not know what to say. "So you knew the whole time?" Adrian nodded. "I did, and I have to say I was impressed. You were nervous, but you were honest and genuine, and that is rare. I have interviewed hundreds of people over the years, and most of them are so focused on saying the right thing that they forget to be real, but you were different. Leia felt a mix of embarrassment and relief. Thank you. I think I was so mortified when I realized who you were. Adrian smiled. It was endearing, and it also showed me that you are someone who does not give up even when things are difficult. I read your file, Leia. You have been through a lot, and yet you keep pushing forward. That is the kind of person I want. On my team, Leia. Felt tears prick her eyes again. I do not know what to say. You have already said enough. Adrian stood and extended his hand. Welcome to Cascade Enterprises, Miss Monroe. I think you are going to do great things here. Leia shook his hand and felt a surge of hope for the first time in years. She felt like things were finally going to be okay. Over the next few months, Leia thrived at Cascade Enterprises. She was promoted to a senior administrative role and her salary increased. She was able to move into a bigger apartment and Mia started at a better school. Leia felt like she was finally building the life she had always wanted for herself and her daughter. But something else was happening too. Leia and Adrian kept running into each other at the office. At first it was just polite conversation, but gradually they started talking more. Adrian would stop by her desk to ask how she was doing or to share a joke. Leia found herself looking forward to those moments, and she started to realize that she was developing feelings for him. She tried to push those feelings aside. After all, Adrian was her boss and a billionaire. He was way out of her league. But the more time she spent with him, the more she saw past the CEO persona. He was kind, thoughtful, and surprisingly down to earth. He asked about Mia and seemed genuinely interested in Leia's life. One evening, Leia was working late finishing up a report when Adrian appeared at her desk. Still here? He asked. Leia looked up and smiled. I just wanted to finish this before tomorrow. Adrian nodded. Mind if I join you? I have some work to catch up on too. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, and when they finally finished, Adrian suggested they grab a coffee from the break room. They sat in the empty break room, drinking bad coffee and talking about everything from their childhoods to their dreams. Adrian told Leia about how he had started Cascade Enterprises in his garage and how he had nearly gone bankrupt in the first year. Leia told him about Mia, about her ex-husband, and about the struggles of being a single mom. I admire you, Adrian said quietly. You have been through so much and you are still standing. Leia shrugged. I did not have a choice. I had to keep going for Mia. But that is what makes it admirable. Adrian said a lot of people would have given up, but you did not. Leia felt her heart flutter, and for a moment she thought Adrian might say something more. But then his phone buzzed and the moment was broken. He glanced at the screen and sighed. I have to take this. I will see you tomorrow. Leia. Leia watched him leave and felt a mix of disappointment and hope. A few weeks later, Adrian invited Leia to a company gala. It was a formal event and Leia was nervous about attending, but Adrian insisted. I want you there. He said, you are part of this team. Leia bought a simple black dress from a discount store and showed up at the gala feeling out of place among the wealthy executives and investors. But when Adrian saw her, his face lit up. You look beautiful, he said. Leia blushed and mumbled a thank you. They spent the evening together and Leia found herself laughing and relaxing in Adrian's company. He introduced her to important people and made sure she felt included at the end of the night. Adrian walked Leia to her car. Thank you for coming tonight, he said. It meant a lot to have you there. Leia smiled. I had a great time. Adrian hesitated and then said, Leia, I know this might be inappropriate, but I have really enjoyed getting to know you and I was wondering if you would like to have dinner with me. Sometime not as colleagues, but as something more. Leia's heart skipped a beat. Are you asking me on a date? Adrian nodded. I am. If that is okay. Leia felt a rush of emotions. She had been hoping for this, but she was also scared. What if it did not work out? What if it complicated things at work? But then she looked at Adrian and saw the sincerity in his eyes, and she knew she had to take the risk. I would love to, she said. They went on their first date the following weekend, and it was perfect. Adrian took her to a quiet restaurant and they talked for hours. Leia felt like she could be herself around him, And Adrian seemed to feel the same way. They started dating officially, and Laya introduced Adrian to Mia, who adored him from the start as the Yair. Months went by. Laya and Adrian's relationship deepened. They faced challenges. Of course, the media found out about their relationship, and there were rumors and gossip. But Adrian stood by Laya and protected her from the scrutiny. He made it clear that he was serious about her and that he was not going anywhere. 1 year after that foggy morning in Seattle, Adrian proposed to Laya. He did it simply and sincerely, in the same break room where they had shared coffee and conversation. Laya said yes without hesitation. They got married in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. Mia was the flower girl, and she beamed with happiness. Laya looked at Adrian and felt overwhelming gratitude. She had started that day thinking she was getting into an Uber, and instead she had found her soulmate. As Laya stood there in her wedding dress, she thought about how far she had come from the struggling single mom who could barely make ends meet to a woman who had found love, stability, and happiness. She had taken a risk, she had been resilient, and she had never given up. And in the end, the universe had rewarded her in ways she never could have imagined. Adrian took her hand and whispered, "I love you, Laya Monroe Hale." And Laya smiled back, "I love you too." And as they walked down the aisle together, Laya knew that her story was proof that sometimes the most unexpected moments can lead to the most extraordinary outcomes, and that no matter how hard life gets, there is always hope for a better tomorrow.